we've now got all the layers ready. So what I've got at the base is I've got all my magnetic clasps on, and on this one I've done it a little bit differently. I've put 2 magnetic clasps at the bottom as well of the tree, because I just found, I think, though it holds on the fridge quite nicely, I think when all the decorations are added it just might need a little bit more magnetism to stay stable. Now this is where I use my fusible webbing that I've shown you, that very thin fusible webbing. I place that on next. Now I've done each of my trees that I've made, I've done a little modification to it, and on this one I'm going to do another modification, and I'll show you why in a minute. As I'm going to put 2 layers of fusible webbing over this tree, and I'll show you in a minute why. And then the last one is going to put on my top layer. Now this you're going to have to be, is quite tricky, and it takes a little bit of time. What you've got to make sure, along with the fusible webbing being a bit tricky, is you've got to come down, when you've got it right, come down and just check that each of these magnetic clasps is at equidistance from the tree as you go down. And you want to make sure, because you don't want to be sewing over those, your needles won't like it, and neither will you. So you do that, and then what you're going to need to do is you've got to add your base. So this little Christmas tree base will sit just underneath. Move this up so you can get a better view. You'll have to position it last, and it'll sit just over it, and we're going to stitch all the way along. Now you'll see that those metal clasps at the bottom here, I've put them so they sit central to those 2 zigzag positions. So I'll sort that out. But the reason I've used double fusible webbing is on my first that I made, I put a single layer of fusible webbing in, but I wasn't happy that I get these little puckers coming up. So I thought, okay, there's not enough glue in there, and I probably didn't use a hot enough iron. I have gone back and ironed it, but it's not 100%. You can see, and here's the other one. So this one here, what I did is I've used the you can see I've used that white interfacing there, same as what I'm using on my current one I'm making, but I only used a single layer, and I've still got the odd little bobble. So on this one here I've decided, okay, we've got the fusible interfacing underneath. I'm going to use a double layer of the fusible webbing, and I'll get this all positioned, iron it on. Right, the next thing we need to do after ironing all the layers together is to stitch around the outside of the tree. Now when you're stitching around the outside of the tree, it's really important that you use the correct needle on your sewing machine, or you'll have all sorts of ugly stitches going on. The one I recommend is a 116 sewing machine needle, and it sews through all those layers, including the felt, really well. One thing you need to take great care on is sewing around or over these magnetic clasps. When you come to do the magnetized side, which is quite a bit thicker, you'll actually find that your machine will want to jump a little bit. So you need to just go a little bit slowly around each of those. Just take care. You will end up skipping a stitch or 2, but it'll still hold beautifully. Now one of the things I did when I ironed everything together this morning was I trimmed away the surplus webbing on the edges as I went. Otherwise you're going to end up melting your iron. See how you go. As you can see, this one's actually adhered really well. I used the hottest setting on my iron, as well as using an old handkerchief to protect the Velcro fabric from the heat. And I'll go away and sew it and be back. Right, the last thing we need to do now is, after stitching around all the layers together around the tree, is to use your scissors and cut the felt all the way around the edges. Now you have to take great care when you do this, because if you get too close you'll end up cutting the felt on an angle, and that'll cut all your stitching at the back here. So go slowly, take care, and have fun.